and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from my office at Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy, and we are super excited to be talking to Monica Cox today about fertility. For those of you that follow Janet and I, you know that we specialize in hormone replacement and we deal with fertility often. So Monica is going to give us a different perspective and how holistic fertility can be practiced. So Monica, welcome to our show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. You guys do amazing work. I was checking out your podcast and over like 500 episodes, like really impressive. So well done. Thank you so much for everything that you guys are doing. And if you haven't already, go leave these guys an amazing reviews because you guys definitely deserve it.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We really have a passion for what we do. And I think we're going on almost our 600 episode now. Here shortly.
Yeah.
We will be. Yeah. So super excited for that. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I am a mama of two beautiful boys, which when I was 30 years old, they told me that I couldn't. I would never become a mom. I had low egg quality, just keep doing IVF. And so I decided to take a different route. I had something in my heart and I knew that there was a way. I didn't know how, what, when, or where. And so I went on this path, and this path led me to become a holistic functional fertility health coach. And that means I take the holistic side of it and the functional side. We are humans, we have this beautiful physical body, but sometimes it's not in alignment. So we really need to get it in alignment with holistic things, but also using our intuition and our discernment when medical assistance is needed, right? Because sometimes we do need that. So bridging that gap and really finding your right path of what you need to do. And I am in the fertility space because obviously it is true to my heart. That was my journey. And so I help women understand that their fertility is so much more than their lady bits, so much more than their hormones, even though that's a very, very important part. And really tackle the root cause of what's going on a holistic side, a physical side, but also a spiritual and an emotional side, because this journey can be so draining. It can be so emotional. And the truth is, you're running the same patterns you were when you showed up to the fertility journey. You didn't just all of a sudden become, have fertility issues. I try not to use the word infertile because I truly believe that there is only a small fraction of people on this planet with infertility. Most of us are dealing with a cellular health issue, and we're just having fertility issues right now. And if we can get to the root cause, maybe with a little bit of medical assistance, we can become those mamas that we truly want to be.
Janet, I bet you have some questions for Monica.
I do, Monica. So how did you get to the holistic side? Because usually there's a journey, right? Like there's something that draws you in and saying, okay, this is the path that I want to go. So let us know how you stepped into that part.
So my fertility journey was very physical, and like most of us out there, right? We're type A, we need the knowledge, we need the information. So I went out and I learned about gut health. I learned about the endocrine system. I learned about hormones, and it worked. It worked for me. I have an IVF baby, and then I got pregnant naturally at the age of 36 after my second miscarriage. And I thought, that's it. I've done it. I'm going to have this beautiful life. I have my children. I have my health. I was really healthy, and I was unhappy. And it all started snowballing down on top of me, because what I discovered is you can kind of trick yourself. You can really get into the diet and you have the supplements and you have this and you have that. But on the holistic side, the mental and the emotional side of it, it eventually catches up with you. And I was sat on the kitchen floor with my 2-year-old, and he was screaming over like a red popsicle. And I just felt this anger boil up in me. And I, to be honest, I felt like I could punch him. And I knew that wasn't okay. And that wasn't right. And I shouldn't be feeling that way. And where was that coming from? Because I worked so hard to get to where I was. I should just have the rainbows and the sunshine. And I was supposed to be Mary Poppins and the Pinterest mom. And, I have 20 years of early education behind me. And it just wasn't like that. So holistically on the physical side, it was I was told there was nothing I can do. Just keep trying the IVF, just keep doing that stuff. And I just didn't believe it, to be honest. That's as simple as it was. And so I did it in line, right, with the medical assistance, because I didn't have the proof yet. This was over almost 15 years ago. So it didn't have great podcasts like this. I was just piecing things together, and the physical stuff added up, it added up. And then the mental and emotional stuff came later in motherhood. And I think when you're truly able to listen to yourself and have that intuition and that guidance behind, hey, this is feels good. I know it seems crazy and like no one's doing it, but it feels good to me. I trust the person maybe that I'm working with, or I trust myself. You can do the kind of miracle work that doctors put down, like, oh, well, that was just one of those things at 36. That you were just lucky. That was just like a miracle. And I'm like, no, I can scientifically prove this to you. So that's how I got into all of it.
So I have some questions. You mentioned that you were healthy. Were you healthy, ideal body weight before you got pregnant too?
Yeah, I was normal healthy, right? So I was ideal body weight. There was nothing in my blood work, in my thyroid, or anything that the doctors were looking at specifically for fertility. I was diagnosed as unexplained. So their answer to unexplained now is IVF. So you just get pushed into IVF. When I did IVF, that was the first thing that exposed that I was unhealthy. But to them, I just had low A quality because my husband's sperm was fine. We didn't make healthy embryos. So they were like, you just have low A quality. But that's not a sign of health, right? To them, that's just you're 30.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you're just old. You have low A quality. That's what
Yeah.
it is. And so when between my two IVFs, I did 2 full blown rounds of IVF. That's when I changed my diet. And so all my normal and common health issues, like my bloating, my diarrhea, my constipation, my PMS, my short luteal phase, all those things started magically disappearing, right?
Mhm.
As I worked on my gut health, because that was the root cause of my fertility issues, was my gut health. I had leaky gut, causing lots of inflammation, high natural killer cells, low A quality, the whole gamut. It all comes like in a pair, doesn't it? Like it all just comes together. And so I was so healthy going back into my second IVF, right? So I was like normal, healthy, and then I was really healthy physically, but I still had high natural killer cells. And I got talked out of that immune testing before we did the second, because they're like, no, you're not having recurring miscarriages. That's not you. That's, all the normal answers we always get, right? And when that IVF failed, even though we got better embryo quality, I demanded it. I said, it's my money. Just let me spend my money, right? And even though I was so healthy on a physical level, with hindsight, right? Hindsight's important. I still had leaky gut. Even though I was doing all the right things, I wasn't honing in on specific food intolerances. I was just doing a broad paleo diet. And I didn't focus in on like the bone broth and the liver. I know there's all these amazing supplements and stuff, but for me, that it just wasn't available. And so when I really focused on my gut health, that's when true health came into play on a physical level. But in saying that, I got burnt out on it, right? So when your children come around, or like maybe your job picks up, or, whatever life throws at you, and all of a sudden you're like, I can't keep up with this like perfection with keeping up on my sleep, my diet, my supplements, my this. That's when the radical honesty and the discernment and the ability to say no and have boundaries, that's the layer of health I feel like a lot of people are missing.
For sure, because we, obviously being hormone specialists, we deal with PCOS, as I'm sure you're very familiar with, and infertility a lot. And excuse me for using that word. I'm going to try to be better about that, because you're right. Infertile is kind of this is it. You're infertile. but and that's kind of like a a last it doesn't have to be though. So and usually it's pretty obvious from the outside. It's like, well, you're 100 pounds overweight. You're obviously not eating right. You're obviously not moving right. Your body doesn't want to reproduce because you're not healthy enough. So
Yep.
usually it's pretty obvious by that. But you are kind of one of the rarer ones. Although, from what you're telling me, is that you were healthy by looking on the outside, but you really weren't. If you had all those GI disturbances, you weren't healthy, and now you know that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was always in the doctor's office with like tonsillitis, even though I got my tonsils out at like 10, gut health issues, IBS, all those things. So I was just normal healthy. And because I didn't have a weight issue, that wasn't a red flag for anyone, right? My genetics, I just don't carry weight. And that's, I think, something that a lot of people don't understand is weight is a sign of inflammation. And genetically, you can be prone to, expressing weight that way. So as much people as it maybe was a good thing throughout my life, it actually was a hindrance because it's called skinny fat, right? So you're skinny, you have like fatty liver, or you have, multiple other issues. And it kind of is this mind trick because society has told you, well, you look a certain way, and I didn't have acne. I had good, good fluffy hair, like I didn't have the normal things. So when you feel like, when you're like me, you have to dig deeper. You have to just be radically honest with yourself. And usually it is your gut health or your moods or your PMS. But once again, we've been told to society, oh, well, it's normal to have PMS. It's normal to have these gut health issues. That's just how it is, right? And you just have to trust yourself and just be like, I don't want to be this way. If this is normal, I don't want to be normal anymore.
Right. Well, there's a lot in belief systems that we forget about in healthcare. And Shawn and I, as pharmacists, we've been taught about the placebo effect.
Yeah.
So there's so much more to us because we're also spiritual. We have a soul. So there's part of us that has to connect. And we know when things aren't in a line. And so that's when, your discernment becomes really important. It's because things aren't adding up, even though it's saying it is, you just know it's not quite right. So, instinctively, you do need to follow up on that. And I do think there's a lot of people, whether it's fertility issues or whether it could be as simple as, you just don't feel well. It easily could be that you're having leaky gut. And once you get that back into line, it might be the answer. In fact, we were at a conference where over the weekend when this naturopath was talking about this child that came in that only had 7 foods that this child could eat. Well, one of the foods they thought was okay was actually causing the problem. And once they eliminated the one thing that was really the problem, everything came into line. So sometimes you really have to dig. So kudos to you that you just followed your instinct and say, no, this isn't lining up right. Things aren't aligning.
Yeah, and it's willing to try those things, right? Because my missing link, actually, once I figured out that I had an autoimmune issue, because that was, high natural killer cells is an autoimmune system.
Exactly.
I was still eating nightshades, like a lot of nightshades, because they're healthy, and we should be eating those, right? They're great foods. But for me, they were a really, really big problem. And within cutting those out within 3 weeks, my normal common health issue, because what people do too, and this is where I've, failed, quote unquote, I was judging myself from where I started. So lots of GI issues. And then I got so healthy. So the little niggly things that was still going on, I didn't think were a big deal because I was so much better than I was. But in hindsight, with that testing, okay, there's my evidence, because testing is always a snapshot of your past, right? Not of your future. It's what your body has been through and where it is right now. So you get that evidence and you go, what can I do with this? And you can radically change it, as you guys know, with cellular health improvement, whether that be your gut health, thyroid health. So when you're like, oh, but I'm so much better, I feel so much better. Radical, if it's still not, whatever your ultimate goal, if you still not have accomplished that, be honest. What's still off? What is still that niggly thing for you? And so once I cut out those nightshades, that was it. I was like, that last symptom went away. I got pregnant with my IVF baby with immune suppressing drugs because I still needed them at that time. But my pregnancy with him, because I had this knowledge, and to be honest, I was so scared to have a miscarriage because I had a miscarriage before him. I was like, perfect, right? Perfect. I was having the bone broth. I was eating a little bit of liver. I know they say not to, but I was. And doing all the right things. And I was in bliss. I was so happy. It was like 6 years this took me to get to where this miracle happened, right? And so with that time, the cortisols came down, the gut health improved, and that's what led to the natural pregnancy at 36, because I was so consistent with what I needed to do that my body had what it needed, even while growing a baby and breastfeeding, that it was like thrive mode. Yeah, because your body doesn't care how old you are.
No.
Yes, I know we get to menopause, and I know that's a different story, but we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't know your birthday. It doesn't keep a calendar. Right. Your ovaries are not on a time machine, like tick, tick, tick. It just doesn't work that way. And so when you're in thrive mode in so many different ways, your fertility is innate. It knows what to do. You do not need to teach it what to do. That's it. The miracles happen.
Can you give us some examples of nightshades?
Yeah, nightshades are like the tomatoes, paprika, potatoes, aubergines, a lot of spices. They're just a family of thing that have, I'm going to blank on the word, the like thing that's in them. But basically it's nature's protection. It starts with an L. It's like right on the tip of my head. And it just can be a little bit more inflammatory for people who have sensitive guts. This might be a little bit of a step to, the the realms, but what I discovered, because I was so sick of not eating nightshades, and once again, I was curious. I was like, how far can I go with this? A lot of my emotions that contributed to the leaky gut in the first place, because it just wasn't the environment, the food, was a lot of stuck emotions from my father. So a lot of repressed like worthiness and self-worth, and you're just not good enough. And even to this day, if things come up, my gut will tell me. I have some scarring on my top left, and that scar will tell me. And so when we're looking at food intolerances, you can even go a step deeper and go, okay, what contributed to that in the first place? Because I just didn't believe that, it's just bad luck. I'm just the one with like the nightshade intolerance, like I get that I'm intolerant to like McDonald's or like Krispy Kreme, right? Like that's all manufactured.
Yeah, maybe we all should be that.
Right? But I just didn't understand why these healthy foods, organic, not grown in pesticides, right? And so when you're looking at chronic issues and you're doing everything right, if you're willing to look at that emotional layer, open Pandora's box, because there's always something contributing. It's all interweaved. And like you said, we are spirits as well. We have this avatar, this physical body. We have to play the physical game. But at the same time, we're missing that layer. And that's where your intuition, your discernment comes from in the first place. And why a lot of people can't hear it or don't listen is because they have that brain fog. They have that, disconnection between their gut and their brain. They're so on the go. They're type A. I've got to do it, even when you're doing everything right. And they just won't sit still and listen and say, hey, let's get real with our situation here, because I'm going to get burnt out doing everything right.
For sure. And, you bring up a good point about food intolerances in general. And I'm going to get some people that will argue with me on this, but dairy is a good one. I think most all of our ancestors, some people argue this, but I think most all of our ancestors, hundreds and even thousands of years back, probably had some kind of dairy, whether it be because they were in herding animals with cattle, sheep, goats. So if you have a dairy intolerance, there's something going on. There's a reason you have a dairy intolerance, because we should be able to metabolize dairy without a problem. So you need to get to the root of that problem, not just necessarily stop eating dairy. So I'm assuming, do you still not eat nightshades?
No, I do now. Yeah,
Okay, right.
I cleared all that stuff.
Yeah.
What I find is that when food is compromised by us humans, right? So I still can't eat like gluten that is like highly processed. Like it just does not work for me. But I don't think that's an intolerance. I think that's my body just saying that's not real food. Stop eating it.
Right. Kind of like about McDonald's and Krispy Kremes. I mean,
yeah,
we'll all have GI problems if we eat McDonald's and Krispy Kremes.
Yes.
Well, so in my brain, there's a set of people, and this brings up a story in my life where I had a friend that fell through a glass shower door when she was like between the 4th and 5th grade. And Susie never stopped. They told her, "You'll never walk again." And she said, "Watch me." So I think there's so much power in your mindset and what you believe is capable of your body to heal. And there's so many stories out there of people that, they've went through some huge trauma or something, but they just saw that they were going to heal. And then there are people, it seems like, that don't really have that. And I'm not discounting their situation, but maybe that mountain wasn't as big for Susie, but it is for this person. And I do think there's a lot in how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive that we can heal, and belief. There's a lot in our belief systems and where those questions come in, and we can change that. I think there's times where we can really change that trajectory by figuring out, why do we think that way? Why is that happening? And you mentioned on some, it may not have been trauma, but it was something that was triggering you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We're just looping, right? So we come into this world, we're, open to programming. We're in that theta state for many, many years. And so your environment, who you're around, what they're into, what's going on, just program. You keep going, you keep going. I also believe in your ancestral, it's obviously scientifically proven you're holding like 14 probably plus generations in your blood. So everything adds up. And I believe that there is this, I don't want to say spark, but there's maybe this like, kind of like, just watch me, because as much as I wanted to be a mother, I have to be honest, someone told me I couldn't, so I was going to prove them wrong. And that kind of like tenacity, that kind of like fight. But in saying that, you still have to show up for yourself when you're failing. Because here's the truth, when you're on this like healing journey, 95% of it is failing. And only people look at you and like, oh, you achieved. Yeah, because I was willing to go through those hardships. I was willing to follow my intuition and do radical things. Some worked, some didn't, right? I'm not saying they all work, but you're willing to keep going. And that is the magical unicorn. That's when people are like, well, you're just lucky, or you're an outlier. Yeah, I'm an outlier, not because I can do it, because I was willing to do it when it got hard, when it got messy. And now with the knowledge that we are gaining about mindset, about subconscious, about the trauma, about the nervous system, if people can realize that everything's made up, everything in this whole world, you look around you, someone had to imagine it and make it up, other than nature, right? That got made up as well. But but the first person that found an apple and how it became labeled an apple, right? It's all imagination. And your nervous system is what's actually creating that reality for you. And so if you can start reprogramming whatever needs to be reprogrammed for you, start tuning that nervous system, the radical honesty. What's your default energy? because a lot of us are doing all the right things, but maybe not seeing the result we want. And the result we want maybe just be peace. It might just be joy. And we're like, why don't we feel that? And because our nervous systems are projecting this reality, getting in tune with the emotions, with your subconscious beliefs, and being willing to open that Pandora's box and go, okay, this is a little bit messy here, but I'm going to look at it, or I'm going to put in the work to walk again. I don't think people realize how much time and effort and tenacity that takes to learn to walk again. And like I had an 8-year journey, and most people are like, I wouldn't do that for 8 years. And I sit there and I'm like, I wasn't thinking about that when I was 36 holding my baby.
No.
I wasn't thinking, oh God, it took me 8 years. I was like, God, I'm glad I never gave up.
Right.
Exactly.
Of course. Right.
Time's going anyways. How do you
I got to ask, were you cycling regularly before you got pregnant the first time?
Yeah, I was cycling. That was the only thing working for me. It was all high inflammation. That was my thing. So when I was there were some times I felt I was pregnant naturally, but I never saw a positive pregnancy test, but I felt it. But I was so inflamed in my body that my egg quality was so low. And then even if I got like an embryo that made it, my body would attack it. My immune system would just be like, nope, what's here, right? Because an embryo is a foreign agent until about 12 months when the placenta takes over, or 12 weeks, sorry, until the placenta takes over. So for me, yeah, my period was always there. So that was the frustrating bit too.
Yeah, and that's usually when they come to us, they use and we hear about it, they're usually not having a cycle.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your website, findingfertility.co.
Yeah, so my website is there. I obviously have my offers and you can find out all about me, but there is a great podcast and blog section. Like you guys, I've been podcasting since 2000 or 2019, I think. And just a wealth of information from, everything energetics, frequency, gut health, emotional, to just really dive in and start hearing a different story. I actually met a woman in the gym, and one of our mutuals said, oh, Monica does fertility stuff, and this woman's dealing with fertility issues. And she's like, oh, can I have a consultation with you? And I said, go check out my stuff first and see if it's in alignment, because I'm not here for the cookie cutter stuff. You got to take radical responsibility for yourself, because it's only you that can show up for you. You can have guides, you can have coaches, you can have medication, you can have you can have IVF, but your body still needs to receive that information, and you still need to show up in a way that it can work with you.
Yeah, for sure. And your perfect example of that is it was not cookie cutter, and it took some hard work.
Yeah.
If people are willing to put in the hard work, then they probably shouldn't spend the time and the resources with you. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to be willing to just show up for yourself, because what I have to offer, medication is great when it's needed, and it can be supportive, and it does take over your body. It does the things that, you need the support with. But what I teach with the intuition and the discernment and really clearing out those energetic blocks to stick to the diet, right? When people are like, I know the diet, I just can't stick to it. Okay, let's get to the root of that. Why can't you stick to that diet? Or even, medications. I've tried it, it didn't work. It's like, well, was it in alignment with you? Is that what you needed at that time? Do you need to re-look at that and get into a better coherence with what support you're willing to take?
So as we wind this podcast up, Monica, tell us what you have a passion for.
Yeah, I have a passion for women to come back to themselves, to get truly empowered, to listen to what their intuition is telling them, find that guidance and that support that's really going to help them take themselves to the next level, whether that be medication or not, and really just come home, because we're here to create conscious mamas. We're here to really elevate that next generation, because with fertility, we are creating physically, mentally, emotionally, the next generation. And I don't know if you guys, see it in your practice, but we're getting, the epidemic of child health is just really sad. And I don't want to hear, it's not blame, it's responsibility. But mothers need to step up and take that huge responsibility that we are the ones gifted the opportunity to grow these human beings. Yes, the men's sperm is very important. I am not saying that it's not a get out of jail free card, but we're growing them. It's 9 months that we get with them, and we're shaping their futures. And so I really want to help create these conscious mamas to help, negate any risks that we are putting on our children. And then it's just going to spread out into your community. When you gain that consciousness, when you move in a different way, you're going to, reflect, your husband's going to see the difference, your church, your schools, your workplace, and it's just going to have this huge ripple effect.
Absolutely. So thank you, Monica, for being on our show today. You've helped us realize our goal, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Thursday to our midweek podcast, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.